Hello, my name is Zach Walter, and for my research presentation, I'll be doing elaborations on the EcoGothic. Fair warning before I begin my presentation that there is some harsh content ahead, and that if you are in an uneasy mental state at the moment, I recommend that you skip this presentation. Also, for the sake of the short timeline that I will be presenting, simplicity will be sacrificed for the sake of brevity. This topic of the EcoGothic is a key component to my later honors thesis, which I am currently writing, and this component deals with the proliferation of crises brought about through actions from the Anthropocene. Among other things, my honors thesis will also cover collapse theories, theories of madness, and posthuman, inhuman, and abhuman thinking, each of which is a separate category. The objective of which is to better elaborate on emerging modes of thought and to better put these into practice. So to begin, what is the Gothic? For now, a heuristic or rule of thumb for envisioning the Gothic is as a cultural paradigm of what maps to terror, dread, and uneasiness inducing. I will elaborate further as time goes on. To begin, what is Gothic insurrectionism, or Goth-ins for short? This started with Claudio Culesco's Not Insurrezione Gotica, and refers to cosmic pessimism, cosmicism, distrust of modernity, and the ontological or metaphysical need for a technological singularity. I reject the axiom of a technological singularity only insofar as I think that it's not feasible with current ecological constraints. But that's neither here nor there, nor important for this presentation. Gothic insurrection expands upon unconditional accelerationism, which is unprefixed capitalism-ism, meaning that there is no left-right political dichotomization, in which capital proliferates unabated. For Gothic insurrection and Culesco's text, the past is the entity that haunts the present, and the future is annihilated, meaning all speculations within the future are canceled. They are lost to time, meaning that the present is caught between a past that does not want to die and a future that is already dead. The solution that Culesco points to in this uneasy time is the model of the barbarian, that outside of civilization, that not caught within the linguistic capture of rational thinking. To sum up Gothic insurrectionism, all structures are on a pathway lock-on, even when more convenient alternatives exist, and all lead towards an annihilative element. Following the Not Insurrezione Gotica, Enrico Monticelli contributed to the emerging thought of Gothic insurrectionism called Waiting for Extinction, of which Culesco spoke of highly. Here, the future, rather than just being annihilated, also has an annihilative element as well. This brings into view the concept of extinction into the discourse. Here, Monticelli also begins talk of the solution as active extinctionism rather than a passive extinctionism in which the present is annihilated by the future. The active extinctionism as solution in which victims of cosmonihilism turn to martyrdom to eradicate the world of ideas to actualize novel futures. In this case, the extinction of the goings-on in the present will create different timelines of which the future can be brought about. Instead of just being annihilated, the future can be created. I see this viewpoint as somewhat Baudrillardian in terms, while not specifically stated in Waiting for Extinction, and Baudrillard's related work to the gift economy, in which the subject gives a gift to the overall system, in this case global capitalism, and the system would have to respond in turn. That was just a neat insight that I encountered while studying this framework. Another important contributor to this topic is Deep Chimera's The Feverish Luxuriating of Infinite Doubling. Here, they point out that Culesco and Monticelli elaborate the future, but they ignore other alternatives from the past, such as an annihilated past. And as such, they show that the annihilated past is quantumly entangled to an annihilated future. And so the eradication of past memory will open up novel futures. Here, their solution for the stagnation of the present is a cryptocurrent praxis of new generations that rise up and give no signs of their existence. Here, each of them point to a Gothic timeline that runs parallel but not isomorphic to the current timeline that we live in, which is stationary. The Gothic timeline is stationary and drags the temporal reality into it, of which horrors and annihilation await, hence the term Gothic insurrection. Next, we will look at the constancy of war in these other texts. Miroslav Grisko's Operation Eukaryotic Cell, one of my favorite texts, was a very big influence on the previously mentioned theories. In it, Grisko points to war as philosophical object of study rather than capital as philosophical object of study, as in with normal acceleration discourse. Here, we must change our viewpoint of war rather than as strategic operations between nations and think of it more in the Darwinian war of all against all, rather than in the strictly militaristic sense, as I mentioned earlier. To better come to grips with what war would be, think of it as the uninhabited and extravagant elements, pure unbridled chaos in a way. One of the paraphrased ideas that I found useful in Grisko's text is the magician emperor, as he puts it, which is similar to the state apparatus, seeks stable ecologies for use. Meanwhile, the nomad, or those who resist state capture, seek ecological hemorrhage to escape the state's apparatus as a line of escape from state capture. In it, we see the nomad and the magician emperor, or the state, utilizing war, or the war machine, to their advantage to better account for their existence. Another theorist of interest is Vincent Garton and his two texts, Unconditional Accelerationism as Anti-Praxis and Leviathan Rots. In the first piece, we must note of anti-praxis, which is the displacement of total human agency and autonomy from the planet. There are macro and micro levels of communication, of which they overlap each other, but not necessarily influence one another as well. This takes human agency out of the cosmic realm, out of the microbial realm, and opens up to influences out of our control, and helps orient ourselves to a line of praxis that can be more liberatory as a result. In Leviathan Rots, Vincent Garton takes away from the Hobbesian interpretation of Leviathan, which tries to thwart away the cataclysm of the outside the state, and instead turns to a more Nietzschean outlook, in which the state converts and diverts energy, but does not have any control over the energy. In this sense, the war is always being taking place. The state relies on war for its formation, such as militaristic campaigns throughout history. This can be easily done with archaeological evidence through Asia, Europe, the Americas, and so on, through simple state formation cells. And in it, Vincent Garton points to the state form decaying into the war that sustains it, meaning that the operations, the production materials that created the state also are used to wither it away. So here we come up with the ideal of the EcoGothic, but we must separate it from nature in total. For both of them encapsulate the looming threat of extinction, which is located in natural action. But the EcoGothic, as I've just mentioned, is not the same as nature, for nature is of the real, of unabated reality, while the EcoGothic is a specific instantiation of the Gothic timeline, of the stagnant timeline that runs alongside human action and human worlds of ideas. Of note is also the constancy of the Hobbesian kingdom of darkness, which has been mentioned in most of the Gothic insurrectionism texts and the war polemics of Vincent Garton and Miroslav Grisko. And of note is that the kingdom of darkness, in Hobbesian sense, that kingdom that contains the nomads, the wanderers, the enthusiasts, those prophets that give prophecies that run counter to the state operation, that this kingdom has terrestrial origins. Terrestris, the root for terrestrial, means earthly, or of the earth, or on land. Thus, the kingdom of darkness has ecological considerations since it is of earthly origin, which is where the EcoGothic comes into play. And this is where I find inspiration for the coming together of the EcoGothic, which is more than just the horror found within nature, is the environmental, the living, the dead, and the never-living forces as cataclysm bringers. They act as the slippage for the human subject of eco-depression, eco-anxiety, into eco-horror and eco-terror. I would like to finish this with a concluding quote from Kulesco's Not Insurrezione Gotica. The ecological catastrophe of the Anthropocene appears as the most concrete manifestation of an enigmatic and malevolent will, or, even worse, of the icy indifference of an empty sky. The cosmos will remain silent while the earth will collapse under our feet. We are so far clinging. As it will be together with all the certainties and beliefs to which it has now become evident, the kingdom of darkness, Babylon, a place but a time, the time of danger and dissolution. This is the time of the Gothic insurrection, in which the multitude of the dead, located beyond time, is unleashed on the world, tearing it to pieces, channeled and propagated by the voices of the possessed oracles. This is the time in which the world, or rather the image of the world, is shattered without any possibility of recomposition, and most deviant worldviews proliferate indefinitely. Unity dissolves into an ocean of singularity, the universal into the particular. Paraphrasing Marx, from each according to his own insurrection, to each according to his own desire. Satisfied with his work, the black raven, black metal, perched on the edge of time, sees what we can only anticipate. He watches the planet plunge into chaos, burned alive by the new barbarians. The new barbarians here represent the crypto subjects through the coming catastrophes. But we must note of the eroding acid that is the ecologies that will wither away the world as it is from our feet, maybe even before these new barbarians arrive. And a special thanks to Dr. Everett for pushing me to present my findings. Without her input, this presentation would most likely have not have existed in its present form. Thank you again for listening this far, and have a good day.